everybody. My name is Mike Reinhardt. I'm the head of product marketing here at Opsera, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We're calling this one DevSecOps from Code to Commit. This is our 14th of a series of DevOps huddles. And in this episode, we'll be focusing on integrating security into your DevOps pipelines. This is an area we're seeing many of our customers focusing as they move towards greater maturity in their digital transformation. Today's session, you'll learn more about how to build secure, resilient software and automate compliance across DevSecOps pipelines and enabling security by design every time. This will include how to prevent secret leaks from your source code, building in security across your pipelines, benchmarking your security effectiveness, and measuring compliance. Today, I'm honored to be joined by Vishnu Vasudevan, one of our founders at Opsera and also the head of product marketing, management and engineering, along with Gilbert Martin, who is Opsera's VP of Customer Success, something we take very seriously here, and Solutions Engineering. But before we begin, I want to give you a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded for future viewing on the Opsera YouTube channel. You can subscribe to our channel, where you'll find many other sessions that we've done previously. Please take the opportunity to view the channel, see other content that we've created up to this point. We also encourage you to hit the like button on the content you find valuable so that we can do more of that in the future. And finally, if you find this or any other content valuable from that channel, please share that with your friends and colleagues, and you can click the share button to send the link to them, the favorite videos that you have on our channel. Also, if you have any topics you'd like us to cover in future sessions, please let us know by sending an email to marketing@opsera.io.
All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. We're going to talk a little bit about security and what we've seen with our customers and in our experience, right? The goal really of security, right, is to make sure that secure code is going out the door, and that can include vulnerabilities as well on the infrastructure side. But we're really going to focus on what we see out there in what we're looking at, everything as a code world, right? So today, everybody's developing code, right? Not just traditionally engineering is known to write code, but now DevOps teams are also doing code, infrastructure as code, etc. And then we have security. Security is also doing infrastructure as code in a similar way when they write policies or when they write some sort of checks, right? The goal of this session, right, or the goal is to increase velocity, right, while maintaining security, right? And it's really hard to do, but it's a practice, it's a culture, it's a change that organizations need to go through, right? We call the strategy shift left a lot, right? So a little bit of context, right? We see developers innovating fast. We see developers that want to, push code out quick to get that feature to the customer. As a head of customer, that's also my goal, right? To get the latest feature to the customer, especially when they ask for it. Not everything obviously is there, but we really want to push forward to it. DevOps, right, as a general practice, I think that's kind of been solved, right? Where we have a lot of tools that DevOps teams use to create pipelines and then supply the developers with that pipeline so that the developer can deploy the code. And then finally, we have this kind of wall of compliance that we see a lot where enterprises are, throwing this to security, and security is putting a lot of constraints around what developers and DevOps on how fast they can move, which affects the velocity, which could dramatically affect a feature for a customer, right? So we see silo teams a lot where security is in a silo. They don't communicate directly to the developer. So that relationship is super, super important, and it's key. Security also, what we see is we see a lot of manual secrets being discovered. So if you've known, if you've kept up with the news, you've known that in the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of hacks because of secrets in code, or somehow, some way, a bad actor got access to code, and then they were able to navigate their way through a secret. Just by one secret, you could navigate your way through Slack, and then in Slack itself, you can, look at more juicier stuff. As a side thing too, I love to hack as part of my day job, I have customer success, but on the side, I really like to hack and I really like to get into things and use tools to be able to look at how to protect, not really be malicious, but how to protect. We also see a lot of TSRs, so technical security reviews, kind of, I call it a little bit traditional or old school, where you have a lot of red tape, right? When it comes to that process. Oh, I have to review your ports, I have to review your protocols, and I have to review your network flow, I have to review all of this TSR, right? On the infrastructure side. On the developer side or on the product side, I have to review your threat modeling. I have to review your fuzz testing. Do you even have fuzz testing? Do we know what fuzz testing is? Do we have, do I have to review your libraries that you're working on? Or I have to review your code itself. Do you have any unit tests? Any of the product security stuff can be daunting to a developer. A developer just wants to code and deliver the feature. So then, security becomes very transactional, right? I need a ticket for this. I need a ticket for that. I need, multiple reviews, and it goes back and forth. Feel like playing like a ping pong ball, right? And then finally, there's not enough resources. There's not enough security teams or developers there's not enough security members to developers, right? So the ratio is like 100, if not more, to security, right? So even on the DevOps side, there's like, DevOps is a little bit, the ratio is a little bit better, but it's still not enough on the DevOps side. So I'll pause there. Let's keep going, Mike. In the next slide.
So Gilbert, that brings an interesting topic this week, like where a couple of days ago, like on November 1st, OpenSSL announced a critical vulnerability 3602, right? Like where in the TLS server, like they can get into the malicious client without authentication. So that basically like has become like a kind of another 0 day. But yesterday, I think like they reduced the severity from critical to high, but still like they have requested all the teams to upgrade from 3.0.6 to 3.0.7. I think this vulnerability is impacting only from 3.0.0 to 3.0.06. And if you are running like any of your OpenSSL in this version, based on the advice given by the NIST and OpenSSL, like probably like we should upgrade it to 3.0.7, even though it's a high vulnerability. They don't have the clear information how it's going to impact, but they're advising to upgrade immediately. I just want to put it out because since we are talking about the security and it's the right time for us to like bring this information, and happy to help anyone like if you need more information around like providing a fix, and we'll be able to give some guidance as well.
Yeah, so thanks, Vishnu, for that, right? And I mean, you hear this all the time, right? You have like a 0-day vulnerability, security needs to push it out. How do you do it in a fast way, right? We will have another session about maybe focusing on foundations, right? What I call, how do you know, what to do, or how do you protect what you can't see? So think about the visibility, think about really the tool sprawl that you may have out there from a security point of view. But then how do we start, coming together? How do we start building relationships with development team? How do you really start getting the data so that you're able to understand the developers, day, but build in that security, make that part of your DNA, right? As opposed to just being the bad guy all the time. Like, right, security is always viewed as oh man, here comes security, here comes the bad guy, right? But it doesn't always have to be the bad guy, right? He could, you guys can work together and start understanding and integrating the things into the, whatever your process is. It could be, from the shift left strategy, right? Where do you start? So we can have another huddle just on that, right? On where do we start? How do we achieve that maturity? But for today, we're really going to talk about how we can show you a path to like a single pane of glass that can bring the dev, the sec, and the ops together. Right?
Yeah, so one question, right? Like this is like one of the questions I keep hearing like from my friends, and then like even when I go to the conference, we all talk about the shift left, but there is one question that's hanging in out there, like saying, who is going to own this shift left strategy, right? Because they think someone has to own this strategy, just like the security, just like the operations. Who will basically like build the shift left strategy, and who is going to manage it, and how like the shift left strategy is going to bring every team together to basically like make sure that like they are incorporating DevSecOps, and also like industry is moving towards security first DevOps, right? Like sec DevOps from DevSecOps. So maybe like a couple of minutes, like if you can talk about like how it's going to help, and who is going to own the shift left strategy, or who should own the shift left strategy.
Right. So in most companies, right, the shift left strategy can be owned by security, or it can be owned by DevOps. Usually security owns the DevSecOps strategy, right? So trying to embed security into either your infrastructure, or you're trying to embed security into your product. Now, let me take even a step back further, right? There is security around infrastructure as code. So the DevOps, they usually own the DevOps tooling and infrastructure, right? So anything from Terraform, policy as code, security as code, all of that is owned by that I'll call it DevOps engineer, or SREs, right? That's the kind of the model that I've seen been followed. And then there's the product security, where product security is very focused on products and implementing security in products for threat modeling, for scanning of SaaS tools, DaaS tools, and scanning vulnerabilities of containers while building, while developers build product. There's even an extent to where product security will focus on scanning libraries, or trying to standardize on libraries that developers use, so that developers won't use a bad library, or even from a legal perspective use an open source library that may affect the product, right? So those are the two kind of I'll call it strategies that I've seen. From a shift left capability, you do want to start with, I want to know what is out there first. I want to understand my landscape. How do you start understanding your landscape? How do you start understanding what tools developers are using? From a product security, you want to understand what IDEs they're using. They want to understand how are they developing. You want to understand, are they developing locally, or are they developing remotely? And most developers will develop locally, but I know that there are some companies pushing to develop somewhat remotely, right? And we can have a full-on huddle just on that, because there's some pros and cons on that, on the product security. Now I'll call it on the DevSecOps side, it becomes, I think, a little bit easier, but you still need to know what you have, right? What am I protecting? So having, I'll call it the next gen CMDB, and understanding all your connected assets is, in my opinion, the first step. After that, then you start getting into, okay, threat modeling. But threat modeling, make your goals achievable. Threat modeling, you're not going to be able to do threat modeling on 100 plus microservices, or thousands of microservices. Imagine you were Netflix. How do you do threat modeling on the thousands or millions of services that Netflix has? So your strategy needs to be realistic and practical, right? So when security is asking for these things, just be open-minded and be open to change in process, to be able to automate these processes and be able to see the actual data, and then drive forward with the data you have, and make the quick wins, right? Make data security part of the DNA. And again, I think we can have a full huddle just on this, because there are compliance out there that the United States has already asked for cybersecurity as an example, right? But I'll pause there, right? And hopefully that gives you some perspective, right? And the presidential executive order I was talking about is order 14028, right? Where the presidential order has mandated companies to improve nation cybersecurity. And that's just one presidential order. You have Gartner and Forrester making their recommendations. And then you have Salsa, which is another industry kind of standard or index that's coming out as well. And we can make a whole different, new huddle on just putting together a strategy for your shift left approach, or you're building security as part of your DNA. Hopefully that answers your question, Vishnu. I'm sure the audience, if you have any questions, would love to hear that. Hear any questions on that too.
It did. Thanks, Gilbert.
All right, so moving on, right? Let's keep going with how a little bit of how we see the landscape currently, right? So we do see that there's a lot of tool sprawl, like I said earlier, and we don't really see like I'll call it the next generation CMDB for DevOps tool in real time, where we're actually be able to see, what is my GitHub connected to? What pipelines are they connected to? What kind of, like, let's say you're using Jenkins, like, how do you know your plugins are up to date? How do you know your plugins are secure? What kind of authentication and authorization are you doing at every step of, I'll call it the phases, right? The source code, the pipelines, and then insights. We'll talk a little bit about DORA metrics and security insights, right? But Opsera, right? I don't want to talk too much about Opsera, but in general, there is this lack of, how do we pull it all together, right? Most companies have a do-it-yourself methodology, but you see shadow IT organizations within engineering because we have a lot of red tape, regardless if it's security or DevOps. We see a lot of red tape of, hey, I need a request for this, I need a request for that. And then by the time it comes back to the developer gets frustrated, right? And at the end, the developer will decide to say, you know what, I have access to AWS, no problem. I'm just going to go ahead and build my own things. And by the time you catch wind of that, it'll be way too late and the code will be in production. So what we're seeing here is that we're able to help companies bring the DevSecOps experience at your own pace, right? Using your existing technologies to be able to do integrations, right? So one of the first things that we recommend, in addition to looking at your what we call our next gen CMDB, is really looking at your Git source code management for secrets or certificates or keys, right? If you've seen in the news, the latest news, Uber, Robin, crypto, they've all been companies of bad actors that have gotten some level of secret, and that's how they're able to intrude into these companies, right? So being able to scan for secrets, or even eventually avoiding secrets to be committed into your source code repository, is a first step to shifting left, right? Now, breaking down the silos is a little bit more challenging, right? Because you have security that has all of these policies and security that has all of these mandates that they need approval or record, I'll call it, before moving on. So that's another thing where, if you have a system where you're able to message the developer directly, but at the same time message security and DevOps directly, then that may be a start of you shifting left and a start of you trying to enhance security, in your pipelines. And you may be a little bit lenient on security when it's a lower environment, but once you get to the upper environments, you may want to have a little bit more strictness, right? But you want to keep track of that blueprint. You want to keep track of the logs and the run count of that pipeline. But how do you embed the thresholds in the pipeline and start shifting left? Traditionally, you use like a Jenkins file, let's say. That's what I used to use in the past, using Jenkins files, Jenkins libraries. But it is a big maintenance, right? You got to maintain the library. You got to maintain the Jenkins files. You got to know a specific skill set like Groovy. You got to make sure that you're updating the plugins all the time and making sure there's intercompatibility. And then finally, right, you need the insights of that data. So it could be very challenging when it comes, like, for example, a Jenkins file. And then you need to put some thresholds in there, which is not always easy. So that's another capability that you should look into when shifting left. A big one, secrets in the vault, right? I'm not even talking about secrets in code. I'm talking about how and where do you store secrets so that your app to app communication happens in a secure way, so that you're not, I'll call it from a compliance capability, your compliance, your NIST or your NIST 853s, your SOC 2 type 2s, those attestations definitely need some way of proving and auditing those capabilities for your platform, right? And providing that visibility and transparency of a vault and being built in is super, super big. And then finally, the insights. So how do you keep making iteration on improving your security without having the actual data and seeing where the data is, right? So I'll pause there. Any questions I can help answer, make this interactive? Vishu, anything you want to chime in here?
Well, you pretty much covered it, Gilbert. As you mentioned, one is having the security and quality baked in for the application security and quality. Another one is securing the pipeline itself, right? Which is critical, especially moving towards the cloud, right? That's been the trend for the last couple of years as part of the digital transformation. I feel a lot of people, they are hurrying into the cloud, assuming that they can churn in a lot of features, or they can deliver a lot of quality features to the customers. Yes, but the problem is it comes with a cost, right? As the saying goes, no lunch is free. Cloud doesn't have the security, and especially if you are new into the cloud journey, there are a lot of aspects not many understand, right? There's so many blind spots where the hackers can get in and take out your entire company that you have built over the last 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. Nobody is exempted from that, right?
Yeah,
So
correct.
this kind of integration with security and quality, not just for the app scan, but also it's absolutely required, in terms of securing the whole pipeline itself, with a kind of a vault where you pass all the secret tokens for that particular tool, and also making sure that any variables or credentials or any certificate that needs to be passed within one step to another step, that has to come through vault as well. That way, you can be sure that your build artifact that is being generated as part of the pipeline, it's not tampered or it's completely tamper proof. And that's what Salsa is all about, right? Supply chain level for software artifacts. They don't talk about the deployment. They don't talk about the quality. They don't talk about the AppSec. They talk about how the artifact is generated, who is generating it, how are we validating it, how are we code signing it, how are we making sure that the build is pushed into the production is completely tamper proof. So especially if you are moving into the cloud, make sure that you have vault in place to pass any integration between the tools, and also any variables or any sensitive information is passed through the vault in an encrypted fashion.
Yeah, correct. And the only thing, I want to emphasize this point, right? Shifting left for product security is a little bit different than shifting left for infrastructure as code security, right? Or everything as code security, right? And when I talk about that a little bit, I'm talking about the GitOps model. So I'll give you an example. If you're using Terraform or Kubernetes, Kubernetes to apply a change, most of the case developers use that on DevOps teams, use that in a local laptop, and they update that, and some still do that. And there's a problem with that because there's no central place to submit the code. They don't have a GitHub repository, and there's the code executions locally from your computer. So instead, put that in a GitHub and then start creating a pipeline so it's repeatable, and then add security to that pipeline. For example, if you're doing a Terraform, apply, do a Terra scan, right? And you can put thresholds on that Terra scan. But it doesn't stop there, right? When you're going to apply that, normally the DevOps teams need access to the cloud, and they need access to deploy this code. So which then requires you to have direct access to the cloud, which is not scalable, right? If you don't have a user journey of joiners, leavers, and movers. So instead, create a pipeline, add that to a pipeline, have the pipeline communicate directly to the cloud, and you check in the code into, into the GitHub or into your source code repository, and then you're able to go ahead and repeat that in a consistent way and have it checked consistently, right? So, I mean, little wins like that can help you guys improve your security, right? But I cannot emphasize that you got to have a change in mindset. That change in mindset for product security is a little bit different than infrastructure as code security, right? So I just want to make sure at the end, it all goes into one, I'll call it box here, or one umbrella, because security is security, but there is a difference. So establish those practical quick wins so you can continue moving into the right direction. I'll pause there. Vishnu, I think I'll hand it over to you.
Yep. Mike, can you move to the next slide?
Yeah, just a quick reminder, people, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please go ahead and enter those for us to handle on the call if you can.
Okay, so this one, like if you look at like the one page stop results with Opsera, why do we call it as a one page results, right? Like the reason is you get like some sort of DORA KPIs as part of any pipelines that you have, but like the problem is DORA KPI doesn't tell you like the security aspect of it, and then like how the integration works between the pipelines, right? Before Opsera, if you look at it, like if you want to bring in a new security tool or a quality tool or especially security tool, there is a lot of learning curve in terms of understanding the security and what is the strategy that you're going to build on this new security tool that like team is going with. And the effort for like integrating with it is like 100% manual. You will have to write some sort of YAML script, some sort of like Groovy script, and also on top of it, like bringing the thresholds on top of it on the server side of it. After Opsera, the integration takes just in minutes, right? Like you don't have to worry about like what type of security tool, because like irrespective of security tool, like we have security as a category within Opsera, where you'll be able to plug in with the authentication information through the vault. And then that will basically help you increase the adoption for your application teams to pick up the security part of the pipeline. And also it's repeatable, right? Like it's 45% faster. So like while we are working with a lot of Fortune 10 to Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, and based on the feedbacks, based on the surveys that we have done, and the customers have openly said that like their security posture has gone from anywhere between 2 to 2.5 to like 4 to 4.5 in a span of 3 to 6 months, which is a significant movement, right? Because they have been like trending around this 2.5 like for over the years, and now with Opsera, just 3 to 6 months, if they can bump to 4 to 4.5, that basically tells that like they are bringing the security mindset as part of the DevOps platform, and also they are basically bringing the security requirement part of the development culture itself. So now this will basically take away the pain, like which Gilbert was like alluding towards, like having one security person to 100 developers. Now having that visibility, the security team can basically continue to monitor how the security is happening throughout the pipelines that like they have at the enterprise level. On top of it, like they know they have baked in the security requirement as part of the development program itself using Opsera. Okay, this slide talks about bringing teams together, which I was talking about, like having the security quality and then the developer team, the product team together, right? Because one is the DORA KPIs, which measures your MTTR, your change failure rate, like your deployment frequency, and then like your lead time to like pushing the code to production. Right, like at Opsera, we offer real-time KPIs, be it like Opsera pipeline or like GitLab or GitHub or like Jenkins. We'll be able to tell you like how is your security looking like, the code smells, the remediation, like in terms of the app security. Also, we'll be able to provide the threat vulnerability management across container scan, TerraScan, like how your compliance looking like, especially on the TerraScan, like is there any drift? What is that like you need to make sure, including the internal policies. And also like you get the quality scorecard, like with respect to like unit testing, functional testing, performance testing, or pen testing will be able to give you a unified insights in a contextualized and correlated manner. What it does is basically like it gives an instant feedback loop, not just for the development team, but also across the board, right? Like be it executive or manager, the security team, quality team, and you can basically set up the strategic thresholds on these KPIs. For instance, the security team can basically set up saying, okay, anytime you see any vulnerability like going critical, alert me, and they will basically get an alert notification from the KPIs and see like whether it's happening at the organization level or an application or a product or program or an individual level. They'll be able to go have an effective conversation rather like rallying the entire troops across the enterprise. So this will basically reduce the cycle time in terms of fixing the security gaps, and also helps the development team to ship the code faster, smarter, and in a better way. Right. So I can show this like once I go into the demo, like a quick 5 minutes demo, show like what are the KPIs that we offer out of the box. So these are some of the security posture. We can tell you like how the sonar ratings, and like we give actionable intelligence on top of it, right? Like that, which is the key part. Having the insights is one, like in terms of like who is doing well, who is not doing well. And if there are bottlenecks and inefficiencies, you need to know where that's coming from, and like who should be the person that needs to work on it to basically improve those bottlenecks and inefficiencies. Across the board, like we'll be able to tell you starting from planning to production deployment, where we'll be able to correlate and contextualize and give various set of KPIs, not just the DORA part of it. Okay, with that, any questions, please raise your hand and like post a question Q&A, and we would like to keep it in a conversational manner, rather like we coaching, like what is the best practice in the industry. We would like to learn from you as well. Mike, can I take over the screen? Okay, hope you are able to see my screen. So this is the Opsera landing page. By default, we connected to SSO, and you can basically bring in your two-factor authentication. So we have this model toolchain pipeline unified insights, right? This is the concept like Gilbert was talking about, like in terms of the next gen CMDB. So like we call it as a tool registry, but in reality, what we do is like we bring in all the integrations of tools that you're running in DevOps through this tool registry, and like it's running on the vault. So for instance, like you want to bring in your like tool, like starting from like your CI tool or CD tool or a quality security or a cloud or a ITSM or collaboration, you name it, like pretty much every tool that comes in part of the DevOps ecosystem goes to the tool registry, which is nothing but the vault. And you can basically pick and choose the service that you want to integrate, and you can basically integrate in minutes. So you can basically choose the tool here, provide the description, classification, apply the RBAC policy as part of the compliance and governance. And I'll show you like on existing Jenkins. So here you have option to bring in your own vault. By default, every customer within Opsera gets the vault as part of the threat vulnerability management. And if you have your own vault or own tools that you want to integrate with Opsera for your pipeline or unified insights, you can use bring in your own vault by storing all your secrets and credentials there. And we can basically execute it in pipeline like in minutes, where you don't have to basically like go learn the tool to configure into the pipeline. The next one is the parameters I was talking about, like not just the tool integration, but if you have any specific parameters, be it SSH key or the perm key or the secrets, tokens, passwords, or like your sensitive cloud data, or like a tags that you want to pass, you can basically pass it via parameters in a manner like encrypted, so nobody can see that value. And even the pipeline executors, you don't have to give the actual value, rather like you can basically give them the name that they can execute part of the pipeline. The best part about the global parameters is that like if you are running a Terraform script and if you are creating an EC2 instance and the SSH key is generated, currently what's happening, a lot of people, they share this SSH key via email or Slack or like Microsoft Teams or like through some other Jira mechanism. The problem is this is getting exposed. So as part of the Opsera pipeline, when you create a EC2, there's a SSH output coming in, we can basically take that SSH script directly into the vault. That means like you don't have to basically expose the SSH to anybody. Nobody has to know about it. They can basically like use the parameters through the pipeline and start using it like in the next set of pipeline that you need to use it part of your execution. The last one is the scripts. So a lot of companies, they still like in the data center, the legacy type, there are multiple scripts that's being executed. So you can basically bring in your own script, give a name, and make sure that like the script is like vetted and like it's approved, and you don't have to touch the script, and you can basically like call the script name as part of the pipeline, and you can execute it that way. You know, every time the script is being executed across any environment, the script is going to work and you're not going to run into any production risk or issues. That's on the wall. This is the key portion of like entire Opsera, because like entire Opsera is integrated around the vault, which Gilbert was talking about using the diagram. The next one is the pipelines. So in the pipeline, we have a concept called DevSecOps, right? Like the shift left strategy. So we do have the catalog template where you don't have to basically create each of the steps that is required for you as part of your pipeline. And you can basically pick and choose the template from here. And by default, what will happen is we'll be able to integrate with the tools that you have connected with the tool registry. Like here, you can see the git scan, which is going to scan for secrets, tokens, password, or API data within the repository, and will stop it. You can set up the strategic thresholds here. Whether you want to allow any thresholds or like you want to ignore any certain secrets or files to be ignored, you can basically set it up. And you can also have the sonar cube, and then like have the PR decorator done, and then do the build, and like you can also have the container scan. Here in the container scan, again, like you can set up the threshold. So today you are using Presslock, and tomorrow, like if you're coming up with another tool like Valis, you want to go with any other container scan tool like Anchor, you don't have to basically know about all these tools, how it is being worked. All you have to do is bring the authentication information of the tool, connect it in tool registry, and then you can plug and play within this pipeline by just clicking the edit workflow, and you can add the step. For instance, like I'm using Sonar Cube here, and if I want to move to another security tool like Black Tech, for instance, or Coverty, you can basically say Coverty and say choose the tool Coverty, click save. What you have done is you can basically like build the microservice instantly. Now, like you have to just configure the Coverty and the SCM, and you're done. So you're basically your integration is done. The best part about it is like once you start integrating this pipeline, you can see your entire pipeline configuration in the JSON. And this also gives an opportunity for you to basically see what are the configuration that has been done, put in the pipeline, and you can also export it to Git. When we export it to Git, like we export in the YAML format, which will basically give an option for high coders to execute the Opsera pipelines without coming into the UI. They can execute through the YAML or through the CLIs in the similar way to kubectl CLI. That option is available as well. So let me show a pipeline like which I have. So this is a pipeline called Kubernetes pipeline where I am deploying my code into AWS, and you can see the workflow. It has the build, it has the code scan, ECR push, approval gate, container scan, and then like deploying it, and then like to like AWS in native way, or you can deploy it through Argo, right? Like if you want to deploying with Argo, you have one-click enablement for blue-green deployment, rolling, and then like your canary-based deployment or the shadow deployment, which is coming up in the market as well. So when you start the pipeline, we'll be able to like bring the logs within the console itself, like from the different tools, because if you look at it, the build can be running in your Jenkins or native Kubernetes, and code scan might be Sonar Cube, and then ECR push, approval gate, all the logs, you can start seeing it here once the pipeline gets kicked in, right? That's an advantage. So you don't have to like struggle to log into each and every tool to see like what's really happening. And you also have the summary tab view here, where you can basically, for instance, like if you want to look into what really happened in the run number 25, you can basically see like what are the different steps that a pipeline has gone through, and you can see the console output, which will basically tell you the user who triggered the pipeline, the console log of that particular build, and also like you can basically look into every console aspect from the summary view itself. So that's the advantage of Opsera, where you can basically plug in any tool instantly and then like start using it, and which will basically allow you to move to the DevSecOps approach, the shift left strategy in minutes, and you can start measuring the maturity, the bottlenecks, the inefficiencies coming across like the different organization or different business units or within the product or the application team. This will also help the product team or the business to come up with their stories, like in terms of the next the PI planning, like how the product features needs to be like built in, right? Like they can also bake in the security, that way they know what are they going to deliver and how efficiently the team is going to deliver. The last one is the unified insights. So this is what I was talking about, like you can have like overall view. So I have a dashboard called overall release, which will basically tell me starting from my lead time, right? Like is my lead time going up, going down in a 3-month period, and like who are the authors being like basically like played a role within that particular quarter, your deployment frequency. And I was talking about like not just the KPI, but also like you'll be able to have the actionable intelligence, which will tell you the pipeline that was getting failed during this time and the execution number. And upon clicking that, we'll be able to take you to that particular pipeline run and show you the log why it failed. So this will give a lot of flexibility to the development team, like in terms of like not relying to the DevOps team or someone to give them the logs. And you also have the duration status, right? Like you have like the entire pipeline built, and you can see like where the bottlenecks are coming from. If the security scan is taking like more than 2 days, 3 days for some reason, like there's a back and forth security issue, you can click this view and you can also see like what is a build, right? Like if you also, you can set up the strategic thresholds here, where you can say if any time the build is going like more than 3 minutes, considered as like a unstable build, you can set it up and we'll be able to send the notification to the respective owners, like either via Slack or Jira or like via the Microsoft Teams. Then you'll be able to make a decision. The last one is the security rating, right? Like you want to be at A in every security aspect. If you look at here, the reliability is B. And when I click, I know like where this bug is come from. It's one minor bug and it's coming from the Jira Connect service on the pipeline execution number 280. And that will tell me the repository name, the severity, the author who committed it, and the message. And then like what is the Jira component, they have to go fix it. So if you have like multiple critical bugs or like high blockers, you can get everything in like one single pane of glass without like going to multiple tools and generating a report to see like what's really happening. And the security team also can get instant visibility in terms of like any security issues being introduced part of the pipeline. And the last one is the Git custodian, where like we'll be able to generate view for entire Git repositories on a daily basis, which will tell you like what are the repository and who is the author and what type of like the sensitive information he has committed part of the code, right? Like for instance, like you can basically see, you can find the email ID being part of the source code, the plain text password. And if you want to basically look into this, what is this plain text password in this particular repository committed by this person, you can click this. That will basically take you to that particular repository and to the line, and they will have an opportunity to go fix it instantly, even before the code goes into the production or like goes into the build state. And the last one, with this I'll stop. This is a connected assets. So the moment you log into the Opsera platform, you connect your like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, any source code management, will be able to give you a blind spot view, right? Like in terms of how many repositories are there, how many branches are being like active right now, and who are the collaborators, the number of pipelines being connected to this particular repositories, branches, the tasks, jobs, webhooks, and packages. And you can basically click here and see like what is this webhooks being used for. And it's been used for the pipelines, and like when are they using it, and like you can also check the active and inactive from the collaborators or the branches, and you can remove them. That will basically tell you how secure your platform, or like how are you managing the sanity across your source code management, especially like if you're dealing with the DevOps or the shift left strategy. With that, I'll pause here. I'll take a moment, and then like if there are any Q&A, happy to answer. Otherwise, like happy to provide a deep dive as well, like in respect to how Opsera helps customers to move towards the shift left strategy in days, rather like taking months and years.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the demo.
Yeah, good job, Vishnu. Obviously, it shares the power and the comprehensive visibility that Opsera provides into your DevSecOps pipelines. We covered a lot of material in a very short amount of time, but if you'd like to see a little bit more in-depth, specific to your own environment, we do offer a demo where we can do a read-only view of your specific environment and help you with some of the potential opportunities for improvement in that world. Just by going to opsera.io/schedule a demo with a dash between the schedule a demo.